that, you know, Sal and I have been discussing this quickly. Just I want to give you an update on what, first of all, we've always been called the Danbury 2020 committee. 2020 is like 3 months. So I don't want people to mistake that this is just a short-term committee. Our charge really is to do two things. One is to look at the short term in terms of next year and the year after, and then look at the long term. You know, what's the long-term play here, what's the short-term play here. And those aren't necessarily different, but sometimes they are, as we seek to make sure that we have the most space available and the best educational options for our students as possible. So from time to time in this process, we may have a state legislator in here, or a lobbyist may want to come in here. I think you met with Ryan today to give us updating on certain things that may be relevant to what we're trying to do, so that we're up to date on that. And then we may actually have some work for the lobbyists to do as well, along with our legislators, in terms of anything that we need passed through the legislature to help. I think we all know the challenge for us, and that is that this year, in particular, we saw an unprecedented amount of young people coming to our doors. You know, it's a great thing that people want to live in Danbury, but that provides a challenge for us and how to make sure that every child has access to equal and equitable education. And that's really what our goal is here. Blew away any of the demographical studies that we've done. We've done these studies since 2012. This committee has been meeting. And I can show you minutes, and there's a video up from our city website, and Al Robinson's even dug up a few of those, Al. Not trying to call you out, but I think at one time you mentioned to me that those are still available online, YouTube and things like that. So we've been talking about this issue for literally a decade. The good news is that we've been able to accommodate a couple thousand students from when we started till now that have arrived here in Danbury. That's the good news. The bad news is that going forward, it's going to be a challenge for us to accommodate another couple of thousand students. So we really need to understand what's happening, where the students are coming from, how to, in terms of patterns within the city, how do we best manage that, and then what are our options going forward. As an outcome of our previous work, we had worked on 3 elementary schools totaling $44 million, and in the middle school, we had $55 million that we brought forward to the voters for the addition to the high school. There may be new buildings that we may recommend, new building projects. I'm not trying to steer this anyway. The superintendent's not trying to steer this anyway. Mr. Levy, Mr. Visconti, everything's on the table, you know, and every idea is on the table. So I just want you to be clear that there's no agenda here except to provide the best educational option for our parents and for our children. That's really it. So, Sal, I didn't know.
You may want to mention that you had Malone and McBroom doing the current study for us.
Yeah, so right after the doors opened, probably by the first week of September, so really even leading up to that, Sal and I confirmed, and we've already contracted with Malone and McBroom to update our numbers and to look at what happened over the summer, and to explain to us how do we get to where we are, and why didn't their projection, their worst case projection come out? It was like double past the worst case. And so I think that'll be interesting to get that. Now, we're going to save their reporting to us on the demographical study until the next meeting, if we can have it ready. And we'll, you know, obviously the public's invited, and that'll be the committee, because I think we need to know how we got here first, and then we need to take some other steps. I have met several times already with Antonio, who's been really good at space utilization assessment. He's worked with Malone many times. Antonio has indicated to me that you really can't do much better in that field of quantifying space and students than Malone room. They're probably the best in Connecticut anyways. And Antonio, I don't know if you wanted to share just a few thoughts or some of the stuff.
No, I've seen very non-detailed demographic studies projecting population, and Malone and McBroom, out of all of them, have really put together documents that have proven to be the most accurate. So it'd be interesting to see how they evaluate what happened with the demographics that they prepared for us. But regardless of all of that, our job cannot start until the demographic numbers are put together. We can't start thinking we know what the problem is until we look at the projection of where we are going to be in 8 to 10 years. We don't plan for the next year, we don't plan for the next 2 years. We plan for at least 10 years out. So any building project that we do, regardless of what it consists, up to including renting space if we have to, all will be dependent on what the projections come out of the Malone and McBroom study. So it is the baseline of where we start. So it's very important that Malone and McBroom is actually working on this, and that we sort of get an idea of what their new projections are going to be for the next 8 to 10 years. Then what we do is we plan for the peak year, and just so you guys all understand, because we're going to seek state reimbursement, the demographics that shows the highest 8-year enrollment is what ultimately we will be designing any project to, and that's what the state requires. So we can't really move even on the state level and have discussions with them without getting those demographics pulled together.
So that report they're providing is going to be a two-prong, like why they got it wrong, and also the new updated numbers?
Yeah,
Make
so
sure it doesn't happen
they actually
the second
updated
time.
the update in April. I mean, the last, it was in April of 2019, they went back and buzzed through the numbers, and they were still wrong. I think it's important that, I think that'll be part of the discussion of why,
Right, just
yeah, so your net out is about 300 kids that they didn't see in their study. I mean, they projected about 1.5% increase, and you ended up with, you know, which is
Almost 4.4.
almost 4.4 and change, right? So they missed 3% of the kids, and we want to know why is that. And I'm hoping they'll have some answers to that, and I think they're going to.
That's what I asked.
Right,
I mean,
before
they
showing
was-
new projections
That's
to
right,
show,
yeah.
make sure
That's
they're
right,
accurate.
yeah, they're going to have to roll that.
Well, and Tony said they're well known, that they're very curious.
Yes,
I'm
As
sure,
well.
I'm sure they are.
What happened?
Yeah.
So that they're looking at all the details.
they also, here's the one thing I would, the caution, and I think Antonio would agree here, and the superintendent would too, with that. These demographical studies, I mean, it's this year's case in point, sometimes they've been too low, sometimes they've been too high. Some years they've had us projecting for all kinds of increases and nobody's shown up. Other years when we're projecting for 1.5, we get 4.5. So it is a moving target, and it's only good for about 3 to 5 years out.
Right.
So it's, you know, something that we're gonna have to continually update as the years go on to look at different population trends and birth rates and all this stuff. But the interesting thing too is if you read this comprehensive enrollment, which I've done a number of times, when you look at all of the indicators that generate kids, they're all down. The birth rate, this, you know, they've been through all of them. They're like, you know, building permits, all this stuff. Yet we still saw tremendous growth. So that's the long play, and that's going to be a lot of work. We spent in the 20 committee that we kicked off in 2012. Actually, we started that in 2011, and we ended up going to referendum a year and a half later. And we inspected buildings. We went to the matrix. We went to corporate buildings we were looking at. I mean, Richard was there, a bunch of us. I think Fred was there, that we walked and toured a lot of different options for space. And that's going to be the same kind of work this time. So, you know, it's not always, we try to do that in the evening or early in the evening, or, you know, from that 4 to 7 window so people can go to work that want to participate. But sometimes you just can't get into a building until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's it, and that kind of thing. So we'll try to make that as user-friendly as possible for the people on the committee, because everybody, you know, wants to be involved. But it's a long-term process. It just doesn't happen overnight, because you need to know exactly what you're dealing with. In the short term, the superintendent, I met with the governor on Thursday for the 3rd time, and they've done runs on ECS numbers for next year, which will be adjusted accordingly, both based on the new student count, which will be turned in yesterday.
Well, we have the 15th for Columbus.
Yeah, there's a window, yeah.
From
So,
October 1st.
yeah, okay, so they've already incorporated that. It looks like the ECS alone will go up a couple of million on top of the projection that we're gonna have. So that's good news for operating costs. Space-wise, I spoke to him, he wants us to think creatively. He's real big on regional efforts, but that's not, you know, we have to see what we're dealing with before we can even get that far. I did talk to the superintendent also about space for, not your job, I totally know that. We did talk about two short-term plays that we'd like to get off the ground, and we can talk about this in the next meeting a little bit more in depth, and I'll have more information for you. One is adult ed, finding a new home for adult ed, which will allow us to expand the Reach Rebound program in the adult ed space. And I think I have a building, but I don't want to say anything right yet until, we've done our due diligence and we work. That's good for the high school. That'll provide additional seats at the high school and the middle school for an outlet for some of the students. And then the other piece is a universal not universal, but a pre-K center. Yeah, so that we can free up about 5 classrooms in our elementary schools that are currently used for pre-K by relocating them to a different building. So we're also looking at options as far as that goes. I'll have more information later, but those are short-term plays that we can have ready by next September 1 to make sure that we've got space for whatever we might encounter next year. Sure.
The Board of Ed has a 2020 committee that's currently in process.
Yep.
It's pretty much standing committee. How do we work with them? I don't want to duplicate the work.
Yeah.
We just sort of guide them as to what we're doing and sort of.
Well, I'd love to fold them in, Richie, because you're right, it doesn't make sense having 2 tracks going here. And the city ends up being the landlord anyways for all these sites and facilities, so to the extent that maybe we can talk offline about how to get them engaged over here so that we're all on the same page.
So if we give them our thoughts or our agenda or our philosophy of long-term, short-term,
Yeah.
if they're doing the work, they go for, I think
Right.
all those.
This is not the PR group you're talking about, is it?
No, this is generally, and because we've, in the last couple of years, we've had a more aggressive 2020 committee to research the particular problems we have with space. So with the new elections coming on and the board, we've got 8 out of 11 members that will be turning over. So it'll be a reorientation come at the later part of November. But the committees is one of the important committees we have, and I just think it's important that at least we brief them as to what we're doing and everybody's working on along the same lines, and if there's a thought process, we just transfer our thoughts to them and vice versa. I'm not generally on that committee, but I would do is perhaps take the chair of that committee. What do you think? Take the chair of the committee and have that person attend one of our meetings as an outsider as well.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. You're right, the elections are coming, so you're going to have turnover. There may be a new committee or new people that are on that committee. That's the moment to get them engaged in what's happening here. There's no sense having 2 tracks, because in the end, it's going to end up being the city and the county, the city council that'll make the call on what to borrow and how to borrow it. So we want to take whatever work product comes out of here, and I want to bring it over to that room over there and say, here's what we have consensus on and what we need to do. We need to bring it to the voters. I would love to have something on the ballot if we need to borrow money in March. It's aggressive, very aggressive, but no later than November. So,
And Mark, one of the things I want to bring out is, because it's so important to seek any opportunities we have for state funding, especially because we have a pretty short time frame, and our reimbursement is actually a nice reimbursement level. June 30th is the absolute
that's your
deadline
call,
for filing an electronic application in order to get on what's called a priority list for the following year. So that's why having one of the key elements of that application is to secure a referendum to show authorization to actually do work, to have the money to do work. So the timeframes you just spoke about work pretty tight, but we're pretty okay with it. Yeah.
It's super aggressive, but the presidential preference primary is in March, so
March, yeah.
we all have all the machines open, all the wards will be open for voting. Just have to add a table for ours and for use, and away we go. So I really want to hit that mark if we can. It doesn't mean we have to have every single, door hinge accounted for at that point, but we've got to go to the voters with a transparent, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do. you know, even if we need to work out a few small things, so I can get that authorization of whatever amount of money it is, when we get in the book. Also, by the way, borrowing rates are really, really favorable right now, and the sooner we do that, the better off we are. I mean, it's, probably, in fact, we're going in the field for 50 million this week, today, we're in the field, so, those numbers come back are extraordinarily low, the interest rates, so we want to take advantage of that as soon as we can.
Do we need a building committee
We will.
ahead of that, so we are in place?
We will. We'll have to reappoint after the elections, the building committee. I think Fred, you serve on that. On the city side, I think there's 2 council people that are on that.
Yeah,
Freddie was on it.
yeah, he was on it. We had a lot of turnovers.
Yes.
So, but I have the last one that we did for the high school.
Yeah.
I just say it takes an act of the council.
Yes, it
It does, yeah, I
It
usually
takes
submit a
time.
letter,
And the
yeah.
40, P45, or is it, has to be filed?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, the EDO 49, yeah.
They want to see that too. So, you know what, that's something we can do at the November meeting.
Yeah, we got a little time for
Depending on
that.
where everything applies.
So Antonio, to get the ball rolling, we have the comprehensive enrollment, and that study done. We'll have what happened in enrollment, the
Mhm.
study done, it's already done, we just need to finalize when they're gonna come and present it. So that's the first step, then we have space utilization. How is that gonna work?
Yeah, well, I think at that point, once you see the magnitude of what you're dealing with population-wise, then we're gonna have to work with your department to determine where that growth seems to be going. You know, we have a pretty robust school district here. We don't have 2 or 3 schools like most communities. We got a lot of schools here. And if you remember last time we did this, we picked the concept of sister schools, which worked out incredibly well. In fact, the state complimented us on the way we balanced our population. So that would be the next step, is determine what the total number is. Number 2, determine where that growth is projected to hit, predominantly in grade levels, and then in hopefully in areas of the city that we think it's going to be progressing.
So in your thinking here, that space utilization study was pretty comprehensive that we did.
Yeah.
School by school, space by space. Do you see that being replicated is what I'm asking, and if so,
Yes.
Yeah,
We want to update that.
we're
we
going to
would
want to,
update that
we
report.
want to update it, which
We
is a
counted number-
monumental
Yeah,
Every
task.
room, we went to every room, counted
Yeah.
every room.
I was just looking at the timing, that's what I'm saying, it took quite a bit of time.
Took a lot of time, and we have a lot less staff. So we might need to get some help from the outside.
We're bringing a consultant to help.
Yeah, I mean, the theory behind it would be pretty much what we used last time. And we met with every principal, every assistant principal. We met with all of the people that were administering key specialized programs, educational programs. It was pretty robust,
It was comprehensive.
very, very, yeah.
That was the one that was done about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was a value though. I
Yeah.
thought it was a valuable
It was, yeah.
experience for us.
Because
Yeah.
we've added on to the buildings too, with
Correct.
modules and all that, so the
Exactly.
capacities will be
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Got a question on the projections for the demographer. How do we adjust for the margin of errors? Like you said, historically in the past, they've been low, they've been high, they've been all over the place. If they come up with a number, I mean, I'm assuming you just can't take that number, you should factor in some
No, yeah,
deviation.
you have to have a buffer in there, so I
Yeah.
mean, you know, and that's something we should probably talk to them about engineering wise.
If you look in there, you're talking about the demographers, they have 3-way patterns.
Yeah, I saw the high.
Right, they have a 3-way pattern, and within there, but
But we built to the high, Richie, so it didn't matter
it
anyway.
doesn't want you to. They'll give you the 3 patterns.
Okay.
Yeah, and the state will want to know that as well. You had an unusual circumstance this year,
Yeah, right.
and things like that.
I think if we set a goal to have a framework of a plan with some kind of rough cost budget analysis done, that I can bring to the voters, to the council first, and then to the voters by March, that's a very aggressive, robust plan, but I think it's doable. I understand we may not have every space utilization building done yet, but at least we'll have a sense. The demographer will have reported, we'll know what we're gonna need. We'll have looked at some of the short-term plays, factor those in, and then know exactly what we're gonna need for space.
Yeah, because it's critical to understand, you know, these projects just don't happen. When you take the state money, which is great, they put you through hell.
They put it to the right.
It's a very detailed process. you gotta follow it, you gotta go to the meetings, you gotta make sure all the documentation is done. There's all kinds of requirements as it pertains to bidding work. So it takes a while. So a short-term approach in dealing with the most immediate issue and getting creative there is gonna be required as we plan for the final dealing of the growth. But short-term wise, I think we have to start tackling that too, almost immediately, once we get our numbers.
And we're ready to do that.
Yeah.
It's right away, this year seems to be an anomaly. We've never had this much of a bump or deviation from what we've normally had. Is there a way to determine this year why it happened? Is there such a thing, the possibility of creating a survey for the new people that
That's
came
what,
in?
that's what the department
Yeah, they can do that.
that's what they got paid to do.
Yeah.
They collected information, you know, they did housing stock, they looked at availability, they looked at it, and then they had the impact. They're gonna research where the impact happened, look at and do that study for us, and bring it back to us. That's what we.
And our health
specifically asked them
department's
to
done
do.
a lot of analysis as well on data that sales provided, so I found that very interesting also. It's not, part of the problem is, you know, when because I straddle both sides, I know how sales disperses students, and I'm sensitive about that, but how where he allocates the students. So I don't know if the health department understands how he does it. I do, so I can, where they say, you know, this school might be short 20 kids, that may not necessarily be true, because we may have transferred 20 kids to that building, and she may not know it down there. But there's some really interesting stuff in there that they had worked through with some of the numbers, which I think I'm gonna ask Lisa to join the team here anyways. I think it's helpful. She's a really good 50,000 foot thinker about this kind of stuff. So yeah, but I agree with you, and you just gotta take all these studies with it. Even with Malone McBroom, who is probably one of the best ones out there, with a grain of salt. You know, this year, went the other way. There was, I remember 10 years ago,
Shelter Rock prediction.
Yeah.
They were gonna have 105 kids in the vacancy.
Right.
Bubble going through.
Yeah, it never showed up, so but this year clearly it did. So I think that's important for us to know that. And also, I think, you know, one of the things that they should look at, maybe Sal can come up with this, is how does state policy, education policy is ever evolving, and it does impact on which programs kids are put in and which buildings kids are put in. So that's something we should just keep an eye on, particularly as the session starts, and know, you know, okay, if they decide to raise the education level to age 22, adding an extra year, means we gotta keep kids an extra year, what does that do for space? Something we may not even think about as we're going through this, but we'll work on that. So I think Antonia's gonna start pulling together all the paperwork from the previous space utilization thing that can be concurrently being done. We may need to bring in Pat or somebody that's willing to do that work for us or with us to give him assistance. Sal, we'll work with Malone and McBroom to schedule a time.
Which what I had indicated to them, I would like to come to this committee at their first regular committee and present it to them.
Yeah.
They would get it for the first.
Yeah,
meeting,
yeah,
right? Is that
absolutely,
your
yeah.
thinking?
But, so we probably have to wait till after election day though, right, Richie? Because you're gonna have, would it make sense for you to do it once in front of the other 2020 committee?
Yeah, I think so.
How many people are on the other 2020 committee?
Generally, there are 5.
You're talking about our sites and
Yeah,
facilities?
the sites and facilities?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
5.
Oh, so that's just a straight sites and facilities?
Right,
So it's
right.
also maintenance issues they deal with too, right? Not
Yeah,
just
yeah,
space
yeah, I
too.
just referred 2020, that's
Okay.
detective because.
Okay, then we should have somebody from that committee on this,
Mhm.
so that they can go
Yeah,
back.
we'll wait until we create new chair people.
Okay,
I'm on, you're on, Mark.
okay, I didn't, okay,
She's a holdover this year.
that's right. Tell me about scheduling, how many times, you know, look, if we're gonna move quickly, I think twice a month is probably, I know it's a lot, it's aggressive, and I know everybody can't always be here for every meeting. And I always tell Fred this county is just one meeting a month. But tell me about your schedules. Should we just set the schedule? If you can be there, you can be there, you're not. Do we try to work around this timing? Early evening the best time? Give me a sense of what you're thinking. What works for you, Sal?
whatever, many people want to meet, 6 o'clock,
This time was good, 6 to
Except
6:30.
Wednesday, with the board meeting.
Okay, board meetings are Wednesday, that's a
Or
no-go.
later.
Later's better. Okay, we can mix a few of them
To
up.
be aggressive, then you just.
6 is a little.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Maybe
Otherwise-
Just
not.
got, let's see where they are, here's the breakdown of what days it's gonna be, here's the time.
So we'll, all right, so we'll try to accommodate that. If there's handouts, we can collect them. Maureen can collect them and then just email them or forward them over to you if you can't make the meeting, if you want to see what was passed out or whatever. Do we have union representation on here from? There you go, Aaron. Okay, good. So I just want to make sure that we've got that covered. And I think once we get going, I think we have to do this twice a month. We're going to be effective. Yeah, quick, only because I want to hit that goal in March. It's a good time to get stuff out there. And means I got to have something in front of the city council, even with special meetings, by the first week in February.
Is there any benefit to early morning versus evening, or depends on, to me, it makes a difference if you're tired, but.
Yeah, I can do during the day, but I know, not everybody.
You mean a breakfast meeting?
Well, early,
I
whatever.
better call it breakfast meeting. I don't know, people work, I don't think they work.
I work weekends, I have a baby, I could probably make it some days, not all days.
I don't have a baby, but I work weekends.
So I'm free during the week except for that baby.
Congratulations.
Like 8 o'clock, or that's too early.
No, listen, I'm an early bird, it doesn't matter to me, I'm up.
I mean, if you want to do super early, I can
I'm
have.
working down.
Do 6 a.m.?
That's-
6
I can make
a.m.
it now. My husband's still home,
Okay. All right, so let's, because I think the demographic study is really important to hear from them, we'll do that in the early evening, because.
We want to try the 28th, which is a Monday, and I'll try to get 6:30 or something, get my room
That works for
here
me.
for that meeting, then you could schedule the morning meetings after we have that, or, and in the interim, I could work with Antonio with anything he needs for the enrollment stuff, demographic that I have to give him.
Let me just pull this up here, so you said the 28th,
I'm just
Monday
suggesting
night.
that, that's
We have a freshman forum here.
all. That doesn't-
And we have our Citizen Government
Oh, that's the
Academy,
Citizens Government Academy.
which is basically a 4-hour gig.
There's something on the 29th, that's the only thing I'm not sure.
It's board meeting, that's 11 on American Club.
The 29th?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
But are we looking to do this after the election, I thought?
well, it might be helpful if we did it after election day anyway, so you want us, I mean, we could say the 7th.
Thursday.
Well, that's our city council meeting. I can do the 6th, is it a board meeting, the 6th?
No, it's just a policy.
Can we shoot for the 6th? No time in present.
It's a Wednesday.
Do during the day?
Yeah, well, we could, I guess we could go to like 4:30. What time is the policy meeting?
6. If you want to come to my building at 4:30, I can arrange everything in the boardroom. She got the presentation set up for you and everything if you want.
Okay, that works for me. Do you guys want to, so you're going to host a cell, we'll make sure we notice it.
I'm looking at Wednesday, the 6th, right?
Mhm.
At 4:30 at central office. Okay. Yeah. I'll work on that.
And Mr. Mayor, while you're thinking about reach and endeavor
Yep.
and adult ed, I just have to say, I just spoke with actually Rich and I, Christine and Jackie, and how important that those programs are together.
Oh, yeah, no, we're not going to split
Okay,
them.
okay.
No, I agree. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's definitely, they work off each other well.
Yeah.
I think we may peel out we raise though, which is adult ed.
Yeah, that just allows more room for retreat down there.
Well, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
the
Together.
reach and
I'm gonna find
and
them,
re-raise.
I'm gonna
so,
find
yeah.
adult ed in a home.
Yeah.
Nicely.
What's the location of the meeting?
We're gonna be at the board, at Beaverbrook, yeah. We'll get out notices to everybody.
6.
Agenda, no.
4:30.
And do we have the sign-in list, is that going around?
We have it.
Yeah, is everybody signed in?
Aaron, do we have your email?
Is everybody on assignment part of the committee? Give a list of the committee.
I have a list of committee members, but I'm gonna notice everybody.
Yeah.
I think when it gets to brass tacks, we'll, yeah, I'm hoping we can find consensus and not have to necessarily vote on every little thing. I mean, if we do, we do, when it gets to that point, but the way it worked last time, we had a really strong working group. I know you were involved, Rich, and worked out well. Okay, anybody have any comments for the group? Yes.
Is there anywhere that's posted or any information that you know what the current needs are, like where we're actually at?
That's what the demographer is gonna do for us the next
Good.
meeting. Yeah, they're gonna go and speak to that.
Okay.
So we're trying to identify the problem first, to know what buildings, where the needs are,
So
what's
there's
driving
nothing
this.
that's been reported as far as like,
Nothing that I really want them to do. I want them, yeah.
Report on enrollment?
yeah, like which schools are at maximum capacity or
Oh,
what we're.
Lord.
That's-
That's one, they decided that's one.
So there's not any school
There's
that's-
one that's probably the like Great Plains,
Okay,
which houses our special programs.
Okay.
Even though the small ones would have a little room, but everyone else has
so
been treated.
even every single middle school and.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we had eight modules to us, I think. Eight.
They're full.
This year, and next year it'll be full. There are 2 grades in this year. Next year you'll have 6, 7, 8.
Each year you're adding another grade.
So we just had that last year,
That's a kid's gift.
and the middle schools are.
But they'll go over that, they'll have those numbers
Okay,
for
so
you by
that's-
school.
okay.
And then what we do is we take that data, and that's when Antonio, with the consultant, will go out, they'll literally go to each school and verify that every room, right? And to see where and if and how we're using the space, which isn't necessarily gonna generate any more space, but it's important when you make the argument to people voting on this, that, hey, we've looked at all the buildings, we're using every inch, here's how we're using it, this is why we need to do X, Y, and Z. It's a good exercise for us to know exactly how each room is being utilized. It's time consuming, but important.
We took our teacher's lounge and we're now teaching at our Spark. Teacher's lounge gone. See ya.
You had a lounge, or was it high school? We didn't get a lounge. Okay, any other questions?
Does that include the high school too?
Oh, yeah, yeah, we look at every bill. Any other questions or concerns? Mr. Levy?
We need a secretary.
Yes, I've nominated Maureen to take our minutes. And, so she will be traveling with us to do that, and acting as a secretary. If we need a formal secretary, we can certainly appoint one at the next meeting.
No, somebody has to take the minutes.
Yeah, she's doing it.
My first time.
I'll review them. I'll review them.
The minutes are
I just
hard,
wondered
not a
if-
science, don't worry about it.
I just wonder if she's on overtime, I don't know.
She is on OT, yes.
Yes, actually, so am I.
Yeah, you really,
Fred, don't, no.
no way.
Okay, then you ain't gonna get your study done.
Stop. Okay, anybody have anything else? Good, then at this time, we're adjourned to November the 6th at 4:30 PM at Central. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm Lisa Ruffles, by the way.
Good.
You reached out.